Hey, I want to welcome you to EQUIP, Encouraging Qualities Undeveloped in Parents, where I'm trying to add a little texture, a little background, a little more inspiration to what I've written in the book Homegrown Disciples. And this month, I want to look at generosity because one of the conversations that I don't think any parent can ever avoid is this conversation that we want our kids to be grateful. We want them to know how good they have it, and especially compared to others. And here's the problem: the one way they will never come to be grateful, come to be appreciative, or come to have generous and giving hearts is if we emphatically keep reminding them of such. And so, those dinner time conversations where you're just trying to get them to finish their meal because they're so picky. The kids in Africa are starving conversations. There are homeless people, and the kids are just like, great, share it with them, but I don't want to eat this. None of it lands. So the question is, what does? I like to look at John 15 as a great sort of mediator between what I desire and what I have. Jesus does not say, I am the bank and you are the account holders. Jesus says, I'm the vine and you are the branches. So, which means everything that flows through you originates in him. All that we have is a gift. So, all that we have is something that we can be a vessel, or excuse me, a vehicle of sharing. So I like to work with this definition of generosity. And it helps me as I manage my own finances. It's that we do not give to save anyone necessarily. We give to save ourselves from believing that somehow we deserve God's provision for what we already have. So think about it. My wealth, my gifts, my health, my intellectual capacity, the gift of my education, my network, my friendships, even my ability to work hard. It's all been a gift. And so when I begin to see everything as that sacred trust that I've entrusted you with this, it becomes the engine for all of our capacity to give. See, once parents can see God as the source, generosity stops being a budget line and becomes a new posture of our hearts. Now we're talking about spiritual formation. Now we're talking about fruit, not just results. Remember, results are what happens around us, but fruit is what's happening inside of us. There's a book that I read several years ago by Joseph Heinrich. He's a Harvard trained anthropologist, and he wrote an interesting book called The Weirdest People in the World. And he was basically talking about you and me. And the weird is an acronym that talks about the Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic society think differently than virtually everyone else who's ever lived. So as long as he's going to be talking about me, I wanted to know what he had to say. And it was amazing to see how unique our in the West perspective is globally. But his framework gave me permission to start collecting some of my own stats on how the rest of the world actually lives. So he goes through all manner of things about faith and religion and family life and living where one in proximity to where one was born for their entire life. But I started extrapolating like global income. So, just for a couple of talking points, if your family earns around the US median, roughly $83,000 a year, you are one of the top five earners around the planet. Extreme poverty. You know, the international poverty line, the official definition of extreme poverty is a person who lives on $3 per person per day. Most Americans spend at least that much on a cup of coffee every day. What about safe drinking water? 2.2 billion, about 40% of the world lack access to safely managed drinking water. So better water and sanitation could prevent the deaths of about 1,000 children under 5 every single day. Here's what's interesting too. The time it costs to get the water, every day, women and children, mostly girls, devote nearly 200 million hours just to collecting water. The miles, the walking back and forth, the time they spend outside of their family or could be in school or earning income, just getting water. So I'm not sharing any of these stats to make you feel bad for what you have. I'm sharing them because we in the West are competing with a contagious virus. The belief that we don't have enough and somehow we need more to be more satisfied. And it spreads quietly, invisibly through our spending habits and our dinner conversations and our Amazon carts and our Christmas wish lists. Now, there is nothing wrong with advancement. There is nothing wrong with working hard and building something. I think in some ways that also honors God. But when we operate from a place of scarcity, when more is always on the horizon, we miss what Jesus came to give us. And he said it plainly in John chapter 10, verse 10, I have come to give life so that you could have it more abundantly. See, scarcity and abundance can't occupy the same space. And generosity is the one of the primary ways we trade one for the other. I remember trying to instill this in our son, Bjorn, when he got his first job. He was working at an ice cream shop here in Austin, Texas. It had all these random weird flavors. It was overpriced and underserved, but they guaranteed that he would be making a ton of money on tips because it was that unique of experience, and I guess you had to be able to afford it. Well, they didn't even pay minimum wage, and they didn't deliver on the tips. But what Bjorn came home one day saying is he had this profile in his mind of the categories of that didn't tip. And here's the thing is that they had all these unique flavors like Texas sheet cake and cilantro lime and thyme vinaigrette and weird stuff, Mexican hot chocolate. But you wanted to try all of it. And he'd say, Dad, they would come in and have for like 4 or 5 and 6 samples. And I'd do all this work and the line would be backing up and they wouldn't tip. And that's when I got to talk to him about John 15. I said, buddy, it's really tempting to want to see those people as dollar signs, but actually God sees them as people with whom he's entrusted us with to bless. Trust that God has already met your needs. Trust that God has given you a place to be a blessing. Trust that God is already giving you enough. And now go and don't just give them what they ask for. Make recommendations to lavish on them, to bless them, to pair things together. I wanted him to understand who the source is. I said, buddy, all your needs are met. This is really just spending money for you and your friends. And so I wanted him to be able to see this. And here was the result. Bjorn didn't just stop resenting non-tippers or cheapskates. It shaped his heart for both giving and serving. And that's what it happens. There's a Hebrew word, tzedakah, which actually means both righteousness and charity. And so when we give, we're participating in something that has always been part of God's character, where his righteousness endures forever. This month, we're doing something called the new normal because it's Lent. And these are the 40 days that lead up to this promise of new life. And Lent has historically been about prayer, not just petition and asking, but of examination, confession, and turning. We call repentance. It's fasting and it's standing in solidarity through compassion with those whose needs are different than our own. And so I'm encouraging a kind of family fast to be able to set aside normal, typical, ordinary purchases or maybe even like hybrid or more modest meals where you can save money and then with that money participate in meeting needs. Because if the resurrection is true, If the resurrection brings new life, then wouldn't it be awesome if you as a family or a small group could participate with resources that you fasted and saved and earned with meeting needs in your immediate community? Now, you don't need to wait for Lent to participate with this. You don't even need 4 weeks to do this. You can take a week, you could take a month, but as a family or as a small group, it is an amazing laboratory, not just a lecture. Oh, you should be grateful or you should give. It's them participating because it introduces them to how most of the world lives experientially, not just through a lecture. It gives them agency because they're the ones that are choosing to give because they're seeing people's needs with the opportunity to meet them. And then it creates a memory, not just a sermon. See, the way we learn generosity is not waiting to the day that we have more. It's it's we grasp it by giving from what we already do have. So what I'm experiencing as a parent is we have, and I want you to hear this, you are already incalculably generous. You give your time, your sleep, your finances, all of your emotional bandwidth to your kids, and they will almost certainly never thank you for it, at least not until they become parents or start paying the bills themselves. But here's the thing, what have you already said yes to? In other words, how have you said yes to giving financially to the work of the kingdom? I would encourage you to share this with your kids. Show them on the giving app on your phone. Learn or let them see the line item in your budget and let them ask why. In fact, I would encourage you to explain, share the why of your charitable giving, where you're invested financially and maybe in volunteering, in serving, in partnering with, in praying for. See, saying yes to something means it also gives you permission to say no to other good things without guilt. Generosity isn't limitless obligation, it's faithful stewardship. And this is what happens. The one thing that happens that no one really warns you about is that as we as parents, when we start teaching our kids to see God as the source and we retrace our steps for all the ways that God has provided for us, it has a way of shaping us even more than them. This is where generosity forms Christ in us. As you retrace your financial stability and successes for your children, the doors that have been opened, the people who have appeared at the right time or have hired you, the skills that you somehow had to learn or develop, listen to yourself. Notice all the ways that God has provided, guided, and blessed you. Let your teaching them become God's word back to you. See, the invitation isn't just to raise generous kids, it's to become more generous people together and people who hold loosely because we trust deeply. So maybe this week you pick one thing, one fast, one conversation. Maybe you pick, here's why we give, but start there. Generosity grows best when we plan for more. Not when we plan for more, but when we practice with what we already do have. And if you want to learn more about the new normal, you can go to my website and find out information. I would love to hear about how you as a family are not only experimenting with this act of generosity, but how it's landing with you and your kids. I'd love to hear from you. Know that I'm praying for you, and I look forward to talking with you soon. Have a great one.